Shalom Aleichem, my dear brothers and sisters. I just came across this beautiful verse and I would like to share this with you. This verse comes from the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 32, verse 5, and it says as follows. It says, "Destruction cannot be attributed to him," meaning to God. "It is the blemish of his children," meaning the Jewish people, "a warped and twisted generation." So what this verse is saying is basically that the punishment cannot be attributed to God, but it is the people themselves that cause punishment to themselves. And this reminds me of the teaching I've heard from Rabbi Akivah Tatz, is that when we do our sin, right, when we sin, when we don't follow the commandments, when we violate the negative commandments, what happens is that not that we violate and therefore God punishes us because we violate. What happens is that we cause damage to our soul by violating the commandments. And when we cause damage to our soul, the problem is that in this world, in the physical world, we are under anesthesia. Therefore, we don't feel the damage. However, when we go out of this world, when we lose the physical body, that's when we begin to feel the damage that we caused to ourselves. It's kind of like this. I'll give you an analogy, and I think actually Rabbi Akivah Tatz gives this analogy. Let's say you put an anesthesia to your arm, right? And you don't feel it at all. It becomes numb. And then you take a knife and you start slashing your arm, and you're having fun and you're having a blast, and you see blood and it doesn't really hurt you, and it's fun for you, right? But what's the problem? The problem is that you are currently under the anesthesia. That's why you don't feel the pain. When the anesthesia goes away, then you feel, the severe pain that you caused to yourself. Same thing with the sin. When a person sins, violates the commandments, violates the Shabbat, eats non-kosher stuff, for example, practices illicit relationship, whatever it may be, all the commandments that we have in the Torah, he or she does not feel the pain while they're in this physical world, because we are in the physical world, and we have such a thing called time. Time passes, he forgets, and therefore he doesn't feel the pain. But once a person goes to the next world, then he begins to feel the pain that he caused to himself. And I think that this is what the verse is teaching us, that the destruction is not attributed to God. It is the people themselves, the twisted and warped generation that caused this destruction to themselves. And one of the amazing things that amazed me always about the Torah, the honesty, because the Torah over here is condemning the Jewish people when they misbehave. And as far as I know, I think this is the only religious book that condemns its own people that passed down the book. I mean, the Jewish people passed down this Torah, right? And this Torah that the Jewish people passed down condemns the Jews themselves. And I think this shows the honesty of the Torah itself. It doesn't shun away from condemning its own people that brought down the Torah. And I think this actually attests to the accuracy of the Torah we have today. Because if Jews would have changed it, they would have changed these verses that condemn themselves, right? In fact, this reminds me of a story, I think, that this was in the times of Romans, where a Roman approached, I think it was Rabbi Akivah, and challenged him, Rabbi Akivah, and said, the Torah says that Yosef Hatzadik, peace be upon him, was able to withhold against the temptations of the Potiphar's wife when she tried to seduce him. And the Roman was saying, do you really believe this? I mean, a 17-year-old boy, like a teenager, was able to really withhold the temptation and not sin, even though your Torah says so. Maybe the Torah is not true, So Rabbi Akivah responded to the Roman and said, what about the episode where Yehuda, alav shalom, hired a prostitute? Do you believe that part? So the Roman replied, yes, of course, this makes sense. So Rabbi Akivah says, so if Jews were to change, wouldn't we change the story about the Yehuda when he hired the prostitute, since Yehuda is our ancestor, in fact, right? Most of the Jews, at least, I think at that time in the Second Temple era, so since Yehuda are our ancestors, and yet the Torah, writes explicitly something not nice that he did, doesn't this show that the other parts of the Torah, which write good things about the prophets, even like our ancestors, doesn't it prove that these things are also accurate? Meaning, if the Torah was something that was changed or modified by the people, they would modify it to their advantage. And so this is one of the things that actually amazed me about the Torah, that the Torah does not shy away from condemning when people make mistakes, even though when it's talking about great people, prophets, and it's talking about the Jewish people themselves. So this is my little thought that I wanted to share with you. Thank you for watching.